y'all, I'm Teresa,
And Mark.
and we're your hosts for
Tell me that story.
where we'll tell y'all true stories of real life happenings.
So y'all stick around. You never know what you might hear.
Hey y'all, welcome to Tell Me That Story. Hey Mark, I think you wanted to do a shout out today, didn't you?
I do. Got a couple of guys from back home, a couple of friends of ours that reached out to us and told us how much they enjoy the show and they're loyal listeners, and we really, really appreciate that. So Tate Harper, Wesley Bruce, thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. We miss y'all. We love y'all. And just keep listening. You think, we could probably come up with a story about Tate.
Oh, I'm sure we could.
We need to call Chuck. I bet Chuck's got some stories he could share about Tate.
I know that Chuck Parrish would definitely have some stories about Tate, so we might have to do that one day.
And I got plenty of stories about Wesley, but I think, I don't want Wesley mad at me. Wesley is my fishing buddy. Me and him have known each other for years. He's a great guy. He's not a real good fisherman, but he's learning. He's getting there. So.
Oh goodness, here we go. I bet you're going to get a phone call now.
Just kidding, buddy. Just kidding. We're glad y'all are with us today. We got a great show lined up for y'all today. I want to talk about something that happened to me several years ago. This story today is a great example of why when God says be quiet, we need to be quiet.
Absolutely.
And I want to clear up a little misconception. When we say God spoke to me, when I say God speaks to me, I don't mean in an audible voice. I think a lot of people misunderstand that. Hearing God speak to you it's an inward voice, an inner voice that's not your own, telling you something that you would normally not think on your own.
Right.
I've heard people say, well, God don't speak to you. That's just your subconscious, your subconscious thoughts. Well, I'm going to tell you something in this story that's going to completely destroy that theory.
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah, it will absolutely destroy that theory. So
and everybody has voices.
Yes.
You have voices in your head. It may be your own voice,
right?
The voice of someone else,
right?
The voice of God,
right?
The voice of the enemy,
right?
Right?
Yep.
And even as I say that, it's so funny because I didn't think about this before, but even as we did the shout out to Tate Harper,
Tate got voices in his head.
I hear Tate's voice in my head sometimes because he taught me so much.
Yeah.
In what I do, in my career, he
Right.
taught me so many things, and so I'll hear him. I hear him and he'll say, because I used to, I got my certification to be an activities consultant and in long-term care facility. That's where we were working together. That's how I met Tate. And so one of the things that he would say, I would say, I want to do this for the residents. And he would say, it's not about you, Teresa.
Yeah.
It's not about you. What do they want to do? And so I don't do that in long-term care. I do that in a different setting now, which is actually a resort setting. But I can still use a lot of the things that I learned from Tate and from Chuck and from Jeff Lynn. Just wonderful, wonderful things. But I do hear those guys saying stuff to me.
Yeah, every time I hear somebody say it's not about you, I think about Tate.
I do. Because he taught me that,
Tate, if you're listening, you need to load the family up, come to Tennessee on vacation so we can hang out for a little while, go eat something.
That's right.
We'd love to see you. Wesley, you too. Hook that boat up and come up here and let's go to Douglas Lake.
Go fishing.
Go fishing, absolutely. So what we want to talk about today, let's get past all the formalities. Years ago, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I was working in Brookhaven, Mississippi, and I was on my way to work one morning, and I had several different routes I could take to go to work. And this particular day, I took the back roads because, I prefer the back roads over the highway any day. I'm a country boy. I love driving the back roads. I love those old country roads. Yeah, I'm just an old country redneck. I love the back roads. I love those country roads. And at the end of this road where it tees into the highway where I turn to go to work, there's a store. And I thought, you know what, I'll stop at that store and get me a biscuit and a glass of tea because they had great biscuits and they had great tea.
Gotta have that sweet tea, don't you, babe?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was going to grab me a biscuit and a glass of tea, and that was going to be breakfast on the way to work. So I'm driving down this road, and I come up behind a truck that's doing 15 miles per hour.
Okay.
15, and I'm not exaggerating. I looked at my speedometer, and I thought, well, maybe he's having some kind of problem. His truck's messed up or something.
Yeah.
So we're going into a curve, and this curve, we called it Dead Man's Curve because there's been a lot of wrecks there. Matter of fact, I had a friend get killed in this curve years ago. But it's not because it's a sharp curve. It's because instead of the curve being banked like this, it goes around and it's banked this way. So your car is leaning the wrong way. And in the middle of this curve, there's a little dip. And if the road's wet and you're going any speed at all and you hit this dip, it'll put you in the ditch.
Yeah.
So we get around the curve, and I thought, well, he's just slowing down for this curve. Well, we get around the curve, and he don't speed up. So it was a little bit foggy that morning, but the fog had lifted enough you could see under it. So it was safe. There was nothing coming. When you come out of this curve, you know the spot I'm talking about. You can see a quarter of a mile to the railroad tracks.
Right.
Well, I could see nothing was coming. It was safe. So I eased out, pulled around him, got ahead of him, and went on up to the store. Well, when I got to the store, before I could even get out of my truck, this truck that I just passed comes sliding up in the parking lot beside me, and he jumps out and comes over and starts beating on my window. And I thought, who in the world?
Oh, my goodness.
And when I looked out and I saw him, I knew who he was.
Yeah.
Well, I rolled my window down. I thought he was just messing around at first, and he just flew into me. You put my life in danger. You ran me off in the ditch. You blah, blah, blah. Well, I know that was a lie because I looked in my rearview mirror after I passed him.
Right.
And if I ran him in the ditch, how did he almost beat me to the store?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this guy started cussing me out. Now, I'm going to get redneck. Y'all understand redneck, right? I'm going to speak redneck for a minute. He wasn't saying curse words to me. He was cussing me out. I'm talking about, as my daddy used to say, he cussed me till a fly wouldn't land on me.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, and he didn't stop. He just kept on, and he was cussing and hollering and kicking gravel and stomping and snorting, and I thought, this guy's fixing to have a heart attack if he don't calm down.
Oh, man.
I've never in my life seen anybody act like that, especially a grown man.
Wow.
He was like a child throwing a tantrum. And I just sat there and listened, and the funny thing about it, it didn't make me mad.
That's wild.
It didn't. It didn't make me mad. As a matter of fact, I realized that I was sitting there looking at him with a smirk on my face.
Oh, gosh.
And I think that may have made it worse.
Probably so.
But I wanted to say something to him so bad. I wanted to say something, and just as I was about to say something, and I don't remember what I was going to say, but I'm pretty sure it was something brilliant.
You know it was.
And
Something brilliant.
just about the time I was going to say something, it was like God just put his hand over my mouth and said, be quiet.
I've had him do that to me before.
What I really wanted to do was get out of the truck and shut him up.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he just brought the redneck out of me. I wanted to get out of the truck and shut him up and be done with it because, nobody talks to me like that.
That was uncalled for.
It was very uncalled for. But it didn't make me mad until he said something about my daddy.
Yeah.
And then I got mad.
Yeah.
I got really mad.
I don't blame you.
Really, really mad.
And I don't feel like anybody could say that they would not get mad when something like that happens.
Oh, look, I wanted to get out of that truck and just drag him around in the parking lot. And I know I can hear people saying, well, that's not very Christian-like. Let me tell you something. I don't care how holy you are or how bright your halo is or how long your wings are. If something like that happens to you, you're going to get mad.
That's right.
If you don't, something's wrong with you.
But what does the Bible say about?
The Bible says be angry but sin not.
That's right.
It's okay to be mad. Jesus got mad and flipped the tables over in the temple.
And call people.
He called them snakes and vipers and everything else.
Yeah. But today, sometimes people think you're weak, and a weak Christian if you try to defend yourself or
well, if you try to defend yourself, you're not. Oh, that's not being a Christian.
Yeah.
You're supposed to just let them just run over you. No, that's not the way it's supposed to be. He kept on, and he just kept on and on and on. And I wanted to say something so bad, but it's like every time I tried to say something, God would put his hand over my mouth and just say, "Be quiet."
He said, "Not today, Mark."
I kept hearing, "Be quiet. Don't say anything." Well, finally, he stopped for a minute, and I said, "Are you done? Because I got to get to work." And I just rolled my window up and drove off.
I remember you telling me that.
And as I was driving out of the parking lot, I looked in my mirror, and he's running across the parking lot, kicking rocks, and I can hear him screaming as I'm leaving the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a foolish man. How in the world can any grown human being act so childish and so foolish? And the worst part is I didn't even get my biscuit.
Or your tea?
Or my tea.
Oh, my God. You just forgot about that, huh?
Yeah, that just ruined my drive the rest of the way. But anyway, I left and I was on my way to work. And the farther I drove down the highway, the madder I got. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to turn around and go back. And he better not still be there, because I was, he had pushed me way past my limits. But that voice said, keep driving. So I kept driving. And in a few minutes, that voice said, pray for him.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, I told you I was going to tear that theory apart.
Yeah.
About it being our subconscious thoughts, because the last thing that I wanted to do was pray for this guy.
For him. Yeah.
That was the last thing on my mind.
I bet.
Yeah, praying for him was not what I wanted to do, but I did.
Tell me
that was
prayer.
hard to do.
Can
but
you
I
remember
said,
that prayer?
Yeah, I remember it. I said, Lord, bless him today and be with him through his day. And that's all I said.
Really?
Yeah, that was enough. I did what I was told to do. I prayed for him.
That was enough.
But, just that little prayer, as soon as I got through saying that, my anger went away.
Really?
Completely.
Wow.
And I just started laughing about it, about how foolish he had acted. And I went on to work, and actually my cousin that worked with me, he knows the guy really good. The guy's name is Tom. I won't call his last name, but his first name's Tom. I think Tom passed away a few years ago, and I hope he made things right with the Lord. I hope when I get to heaven, I'll be able to see him and walk up to him and shake his hand. I forgave him. I don't hold anything against him, but I'm telling you this to make a point.
Yeah.
This story is not to bash Tom. This story is to make a point. So we were booked to sing at a church that weekend. This happened on a Wednesday, and we were booked to sing at a church on Sunday.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, in some of our previous podcasts and things, you'll hear that we talk a lot about whenever we were traveling full-time.
And singing, yeah.
Or even we did part-time and then we did full-time for a while. And so we have a lot of stories during those times, because God was definitely a time in our life that he moved very powerfully.
Absolutely. Well, this church was just a few miles down the road. It wasn't a long drive. It was a local church. But we got to the church, and they had a fish fry that day.
Yeah.
And we were sitting on the front row, and the pastor was up on the stage, and he was talking about how great Brother Tom was for donating his fish cookers and donating this and donating his time for this and that. I never put that together, because I thought, there ain't no way this guy goes to church.
Yeah, you weren't thinking about that.
This is not a church-going person. It never dawned on me. But we got up on the stage, and guess who was sitting in the third row? Old Brother Tom.
Oh, no.
Sitting there in the third row. Look, he looked up at me and made eye contact with me, and I could see the blood just run from his face.
I bet it did.
He dropped his head, and he looked down for just about 2 or 3 seconds, and he got up and left and didn't come back.
I do remember that happening. I remember that just so clearly.
And then it hit me. That's why I couldn't say anything.
Exactly.
That's why I couldn't retaliate, because it would have looked really bad if I'd have got out and scrapped with this guy, or mixed it up with him and then had to stand up and sing in front of his church 4 days later. That was a good example of when God says be quiet, be quiet. When God tells you to do something, do it. And I also think, I was thinking about this morning, it could have been a test. If you don't think God will test you, you're wrong.
Oh, he definitely will.
But he does not test you to find out what you're going to do, because he already knows what you're going to do. He tests you to see, so you can see how you will react in a certain situation.
Yeah.
And you can grow from that.
Right. You can learn from that. Are you going to be obedient to that voice that's saying, don't speak right now.
Right.
This is not the time.
Right.
Let me handle this for you.
So at the end of the test, you can say, man, I should have done that different. Or in my case, I think I did okay.
Yeah.
I think I passed this one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been a lot more that I didn't pass.
Yeah.
I think I passed this one.
When it's both. I've definitely had times when it's both, when I did handle it the right way and when I didn't handle it the right way.
Yeah.
I remember a situation that one of the guys that we talked about a little earlier, I called his name Chuck Parrish. He's actually a certified John Maxwell life coach.
Yeah.
I tell him that he learned on me. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I remember one time that he spoke to me and he was like, "You didn't handle that very well." And I said, "I know that I didn't. I need about 30 minutes to get myself together, and then I'll make it right." And I did.
Yeah.
But it was bad. He's like, "If you don't, every time you get up on that platform, that little devil that you see on, you used to see it on TV. They would have little commercials and stuff. It's going to say, you know what you did.
Yep.
You know what you said. It
Yep.
was I certainly wasn't cussing someone out, but it was
Right.
just an attitude. And so it was a wrong attitude.
Yeah.
But we got to learn from it and grow from it.
Well, it's easy to do,
Yeah.
especially when you're mad.
Yeah.
But just at this particular time, I just knew it was very strong that I couldn't say or do anything. I just had to sit there and take it. And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
When somebody's cussing you like that and treating you like that, it's hard to sit there and take it.
Yeah.
But like I said, it would have been really bad if I would have retaliated, because we had to stand up and sing in his church just a few days later.
Yep.
And actually, if I would have got out and done something, I would have probably got arrested for assault, because he had not done anything to harm me
Yeah. It
other
was
than
just the words.
running his big mouth, you know.
Now, didn't you tell me there was something else that later that you thought about
Yes.
when you were a child and riding the school bus, and it kind of
Yes.
related to him and his son?
Yeah, I went to school with his kids. His son was, I'm pretty sure he was a senior when this happened. And I was about 10 years old. He was a lot older than me, but I remember this very well. I remember him being really big. He was on the football team, and he was a bully.
Yeah.
And he had just a handful of friends, but nobody else liked him. I don't even know if his friends really actually liked him or not. But he was one of those kind of people. He loved to push people around. And I got on the school bus one day to come home, and there was only one vacant seat, and it was right beside Tom Jr. I think that's
my
what I'll
goodness.
call him,
You gonna
Tom
call him
Jr.,
Tom?
because he acted just like his daddy.
Oh my goodness. Right beside him.
So I had to sit on the seat with Tom Jr., and we're going home. We're going through these back roads on these gravel roads, and you'd have to understand where we lived. It was, you had to drive past the country to get to where we lived. It was way out in the backwoods. I had a cigar box with some arrowheads in it that I had brought for history class for show and tell for extra points. And I needed all the extra points I could get. I needed all the help I could get. And we're on one of these back roads, and it was hot. It was hot weather, and we had the windows down on the bus. Our buses didn't have air conditioning like they do now.
I remember those days.
We just had to let the windows down and sweat. But he said, "What's in that box?" And he grabbed it and opened it up, and he said, "Oh, it's just a box of rocks." And he threw them out the window.
No, he didn't.
My very prized possession. I had about 25, 30 arrowheads in that box. That was my most prized possession, and he threw them out the window.
I know that they were, because I remember when we first got married, you had them, and we put arrowheads on display.
Oh, I had a big
and you
display
still
case
have,
with over 1,500 in it at one time.
I remember that. And so
I had lots
they
and
were
lots
very
of them.
meaningful to you. I do know that.
And then I did something really, really foolish.
What?
I jumped up and punched this 250-pound guy right in the mouth.
No, you didn't.
All 80 pounds of me. Yes, I did.
Oh, my goodness.
And after I did it, I thought, oh, God, he's going to kill me.
Yeah.
I hit him in the mouth as hard as I can, and I knocked one of his front teeth completely out. He spit it out on the floor.
Oh, no.
Busted his lip, knocked his tooth out.
And you're still sitting here? You're able to sit here today?
Yeah. Well, he grabbed me. But when he did, I had 3 cousins on the bus that were older than me. I think two of them were like in the 10th or 11th grade, and my older cousin that was on there, he was a senior too.
Which ones?
It was Charlie. Charlie and then Kurt and Lanny, I think they were about the same age, and Charlie was a little older. He was a senior.
Yeah.
So when that happened, they all stood up and they said, "Get your hands off of him. Leave him alone." And I think one of them actually moved over and let me come and sit with them.
Yeah.
Well, when I got home, I told my dad about it. I was crying. I was so mad. I was so mad. And Daddy said, "Well, we'll drive over there." And he said, "Do you know where it happened?" I said, "Yeah, I know. It was right down the road from his driveway." And I honestly believe he threw them out close to his driveway so he could go back and get them.
Yeah, probably so.
I believe that's what happened.
Because a lot of y'all boys around there was hunted arrowheads.
There
during
was
that
several
time.
of us. Yeah, we had like a little group. We all hunted together. So me and my dad went over there, and we looked and looked and looked. We found, I think, 2, and we found the empty box down in the woods. But it was a gravel road, and, hunting an arrowhead on a gravel road's like hunting a diamond in a bucket of crushed ice.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to find them. And if they went in those thick woods and those thick leaves and stuff, there was no way to find them. So we only found a couple. But I've often wondered if maybe old Tom, brother Tom, and my dad might have had a powwow about me knocking his son's tooth out, and I just never heard about it.
I thought about that.
Because I didn't tell Daddy what I did.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him I jumped up and knocked this guy's tooth out. That was a really stupid thing for me to do, but I did it so fast I didn't even realize what I'd done.
And your daddy was a pretty big guy.
Yeah, he could handle himself.
Yeah, and he was
he was real big, and he was real strong.
He had been in the Army, and he knew how to take care of himself.
Yeah, Brother Tom didn't want to mess with my daddy. He was a big man. He was real strong, and he was tough. But I think this is a real good example of listening and obeying, because it might keep you out of trouble. That could have ruined my witness as a Christian.
Yeah.
Completely. It could have ended our ministry.
Yeah.
Or maybe not ended it, but
hurt it really
had
bad.
A bad effect on it. Yeah. So, and God knew that, and that's why He just had me to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe it was a test to see what I would do.
Wow.
So that was that.
Yeah. Well, even while you're talking about that, it's made me think about another time whenever I worked with those guys I was talking about earlier. I was working at a long-term care facility, and there ended up being some mold in my office, and then there was...
Don't say that word.
Oh my goodness, let me tell you. Right, because I got an email, it was like from the owner, and he was like, you better never use that M word again. Do I make myself clear? I was like, okay.
Yeah, crystal clear.
Yeah, so anyhow, there was a mold expert that came in and cleaned that up, but it was in my office, and it was in the dining area where some of the residents had to come and eat, because
Right.
I was on a specialized unit. So there was like plastic over the door where you go in. And I just remember this day on the way to work that day that I was just in prayer, a heavy state of prayer all the way to work that day.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I would pray most every day on the way to work, but this particular day it was just such a heavy state of prayer that I was in. So I got called, not knowing that the owner of the company was coming. Well, he ended up coming and bringing a whole entourage of people, and they called me to this particular room that had some of the mold in there and had been cleaned up. I'll never forget. So the administrator of the facility was there.
Yeah.
And then him and all of his entourage of people.
Yeah.
And so he gets me in there and he starts asking me questions and he starts yelling at me. But all of those people that was in that room, when he started to yell at me, it was so weird, Mark, because they all turned their back to the middle of the room and they faced the wall.
Yeah. So there wouldn't be any witnesses.
That's right.
Nobody saw. I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
It was so weird. I had one of those experiences like what you were just talking about. And it was like when you said you were in the truck and it was like you were just looking at him and all these thoughts and stuff were coming to you like, why is he acting like this? That's what happened to me. It was like, why is he acting like this? And he was acting crazy too. I mean, he was out there. He was yelling at me. He didn't curse me, but he was really
You can say cuss. We're country people.
Yeah. He didn't cuss me, but he was being very, very rude, very ugly, and very harsh. And
well, he was a jerk anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, I was just stunned.
Yeah.
At how he's looking. But at the same time, I had this feeling like warm honey. Warm honey went from the top of my head to the sole of my feet.
Yeah.
And it was just like I was just covered. And I know it was because of that prayer. All the way there, I was covered in prayer.
Yeah.
It was just a blanket of prayer is what it was. It was just, but it felt like warm honey. And it was you know, the Bible talks about peace that passeth all understanding.
You're right. Yeah.
That's what started happening. And I just had this peace. And I know I was probably looking like a calf staring at a new gate.
Yeah.
But I was like, why is he acting like this? And why do I feel such peace? Why?
Right.
I never had an experience like that before where I felt such peace. Somebody yelling at me and I feel such peace. It was really quite weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that is strange.
So like I said, you know, none of those people were facing me. They all had their back to the middle of the room where I was standing. I did find out later that he ended up telling some of the guys that he really tried hard to provoke me.
Yeah. He wanted you to react.
He wanted me to react.
Yeah.
And he really tried hard to provoke me. I guess because he wanted to fire me that day.
That's exactly what he wanted to do.
That's what he wanted to do, which was really, really
because
crazy.
you had reached out about black mold being in the building, and if state board would have come in and found black mold in that building, it would not have been good.
But it blows me away because the people came in and, you know, cleaned it all up. And
you were trying to do what was best for the residents there. You weren't trying to get him in trouble.
No, but when you walked in my office, it was so bad. It was everywhere, and so it was something that had to be done. I wasn't the one that called the specialist in, you know, so it wasn't anything that I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to get anybody, you know, into any kind of trouble or anything like that, but it was just really bad and it had to be taken care of.
Yeah.
I think what happened was I ended up being out. I don't remember if we were sick or what, but I was gone. I don't know if I had vacation. I just don't really remember. But when I come back, that's when it was. It was there.
Yeah, and I was working maintenance there.
Right.
And what it was, the roof had leaked. That wall was a load-bearing wall that went all the way through the roof and it had like a ridge on it. And it had leaked and it ran down on the inside behind the drywall. Right. It was drywall attached to a cinder block wall, and it ran between the cinder blocks and the drywall, and the mold grew. And they tried to get us to just paint over it. Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't paint over mold. It'll come right back. You know, that's like putting a Band-Aid on something.
Right. So long story short, I ended up getting called because I had an assistant, and she came in and she's like, hey, the preacher didn't show up today. And so I would fill in a lot of times if the preacher didn't come, and a lot of times the Lord would prepare me ahead of time on the way, just like what happened with the prayer. You know, I would just have maybe this scripture that was going on and on over in my head, or kind of like a little devotional thing. And so I would have something. I would already be prepared. Well, this particular day, she came and got me, and I went in there, and I sat down at the piano to start, and I started singing this old, I guess you'd call it an old spiritual.
It was an old spiritual.
Just an old spiritual song. And it was like, glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I lay my burdens down, it'd say, I feel better, so much better since I lay my burdens down. I'm going home to be with Jesus. It was just a really good.
I remember those people loved that.
Soulful type song, and they loved it. And so I was playing, and as I was playing, as I did a lot of times, the joy of the Lord would just bubble up within me, you know. And so then I would just have this big smile on my face, and it was just like a glow. And of course I know, you know, that was the Holy Spirit. But I was playing and singing, and then I looked up at one point and I saw him over there leaning up against the wall in another room, but you could still see in there. And he was standing there and he was staring at me. Yeah. And all of this joy was flowing up through me, bubbling, and I was singing. And later, I believe that he told some of the guys that he was just really shocked that I could go from him yelling at me and trying to get me to really react to it, and for me to be able to go from that in there and play piano and sing and have joy like that. It was something that he didn't understand.
It probably aggravated him because he went to so much trouble to try to make you mad, and it's like it had the opposite effect.
It did. It had the opposite effect, but it was the Lord that just protected me and kept me. Yeah. And God is so good about doing that.
Oh, yeah.
When he puts you somewhere.
Yep.
When he puts you somewhere and you're supposed to be somewhere, and you know that you're doing the right thing and you're in the right place, he will keep you.
Yeah.
He keep you and he holds you in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
You don't mess with God's children.
No.
He don't like it.
No, he don't.
The God don't like ugly.
He don't like ugly.
God don't like ugly at all. Well, you got anything else?
No, I just want to encourage, people today. So, sometimes God does put his hand over your mouth and he's like, don't say it. And just, whatever's going on, he may just, if you just spend your time in prayer and before the Lord and you're his child, then he will keep you.
Absolutely, yeah.
He doesn't always take you out of a situation, but he'll be there with you through it.
Yeah, and a lot of times he will allow you to go through it for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So you can learn from it.
Yeah.
That's the way we learn. The old saying, you learn from your mistakes.
Right.
And that's true even in a Christian walk. We learn from things where we stumble. Everybody stumbles.
Right.
Everybody
we still
has
live
a
in
weak
a body
moment.
of flesh.
Exactly right. And as long as we live in this body of flesh, we're going to be prone to mistakes, and we're still human.
That's right.
That's right. And we won't be made perfect until we're taken home.
That's right.
Well, guys, we thank y'all for joining us today. It means a lot to know that people are watching or people are listening and enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and share it. We're trying to get the word out. The more likes and shares and comments that we get, the farther it drives us up the algorithm. I don't know exactly how that works, but it does help. I know that much. And if you're listening on the podcast, rate and review, and just let us know what you think. There's a link on the podcast players that says send us an email. Click that link and just type in a message to us, and it'll come to us. And it's always encouraging when you get fan mail. Even if it just says something as simple as one we got yesterday. It says, enjoying your stories. And that's all it said. But that's enough.
Yeah, because Mark, there's churches on every corner.
Absolutely.
There's churches on every corner. There's preachers that's preaching, every single day. You can turn something on and you can hear preaching every day. But we want you to be able to see true life stories, real life. And
Yeah.
so you'll be able to see how someone else applied scripture or, living for God and how God brought them through things. And so we want to encourage. And that's one of the things we've had people that are they're not Christian that have reached out and they have said, I'm really enjoying, I'm listening.
Yeah.
You have no idea what God may do through that.
Exactly. Absolutely. And, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, and I talked to you about it, and I said, I want to do a podcast, but I don't know enough about anything to do a podcast. And you said, well, why don't we just tell stories? Because everybody tells us we got such amazing stories, and we have, all the years of traveling and singing, and we just picked up a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And some of them are not things that actually happen to us, but things that happen to other people that we know are true.
Right.
And there's so much negativity in the world that I think people need something positive to listen to.
I agree. Totally agree. So thank y'all so much for joining us today. Go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, rate, review. Send us a message, whatever that you can do on your platform that you're hearing us or watching us on. And we just thank y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again soon.
See you next time. Bye-bye.